Eric is asking, in relation to the length of songs, he asks, can a song be too short? Because he says his tendency is to write songs that are just over 2 minutes long. So would you, as a producer, encourage him to add additional elements to lengthen it? And is there sort of a Goldilocks song length target to keep in mind in pre-production?
I, can a song be too short? Not if it's a complete song. I've made many records, and when I say record, I mean one recorded song. The word, and I'll just a little bit of a defining of language. Record is an old term for one side, one song. Album is a collection of records. Um, Having a record that's 2 minutes long or just a little over is totally fine. The single off the Nora Jones record I did, Chasing Pirates, I think it's around 2 minutes and 30 seconds, if that. Um, it's totally fine as long as it feels like it's a complete song. Um, does it, um, you know, does it have musical sections at the appropriate places? Does it have dynamics? Does it revisit the hook or hooks more than once? You can't really have a hook if you only have you can't really have a hook unless you hear it more than once. If Because then it's a solo basically. It's one musical thing. A hook is like it hooks us in, it repeats. It's the thing that it happens over and over again. Do you have at least two choruses? Um, does it feel like the composition as a record has a beginning? It takes you through a journey, has a progression that has a rise and fall that is satisfying, and that has some sort of conclusion. Now, a conclusion may be an abrupt stop. It can stop on. It can stop. The end of a song may be where a few verse lyrics come back. The chorus is extended. It gets to like sort of a longer instrumental session that kind of goes on and it's faded out. I mean, there's all kinds of ways that something can feel complete. There is no golden rule for how long a song should be. Um, Listen, some records, like some punk bands, it's like their songs are like a minute long. A whole record might be less than 20 minutes. Oh, I mean, excuse me, a whole album might be less than 20 minutes. It's does it feel like a complete expression of the song as a record? Would I encourage more if it was a 2 minute song? Only if I didn't feel like I was taken on a satisfying journey and there was a complete expression. What's really satisfying about a short song that has good energy and movement and it only lasts 2.5 minutes is I'm so conditioned, and we're all so conditioned to songs that are in the 3.5 to 4 minute length or longer. It's just like it feels like it flies by. What do you want to do? You want to start it over. So I think it's totally great. It just has to be complete.
All right, so then this is now not so specific, it's a little bit more of a macro view, and it's by Duncan, and he's asking, as a proportion of your overall EP project time, can you say how long the planning and pre-production phases should be? Should you impose some limits on yourself to keep some momentum?
Good question. Yes. For me, yes. For you, maybe not as much because you have that's sort of me answering this is a little bit of a double-edged sword because it was Duncan that asked the question, I believe. Is that right, Chris?
Yes.
Okay, Duncan's question is a good question because um, there is no one great answer for it. I can give you some advice. I can tell you what works for me. I'm an experienced record maker. I'm not. There's so many things that I've already learned because I've been doing it for a long time. Some of you, many of you, all of you, I don't know what the answer is, but you have some things to master and learn. So your pre-production phase might take a little bit longer, as long as you're not going back and working over the same thought and decision making process, and you're moving through some things and you're committing. It's like if that takes you 2 weeks to figure out what that feels right, and you're working on fresh ideas and momentum and kind of, that's okay if it takes you that long. I wouldn't recommend it take that long. I would recommend that you spend the time that it takes to write the song to where you feel like it's a complete song. Some people write a song in 5 minutes. Some people take 5 years. I've been working on a record where the artist wrote the song, the idea for the song 15 years ago when they were in high school and early in high school, and tried to record it and recorded it, but never put it on a record because he didn't feel like it ever got to the place where he felt like that the song had kind of come to life on the record. And now what has happened is he's turned it into 2 songs, and both of those songs are now on the record that we're doing. It can take a very long time, but once you feel like you have a complete song idea, make a working demo of it, make a work tape of it, that really shouldn't take you very long. Like, perform it, get it down. Maybe it take you an hour to program some of the basic elements that you need, and then you do a vocal with it. And don't overwork it. It's not about perfecting it. It's about creating something that you can reflect upon. And then, creating your storyboard might take you a few days of accumulated time. If you can't do it all at once, might take you an afternoon or an evening. You might be able to do it in that amount of time. For me, with pre-production, so hopefully that answers the question in a little bit more when you're on your own and you're learning through that process. I'm not facing the same learning curve that you guys are necessarily. I might be facing different. I have different learning curves based on the type of music. I feel like I can make anybody's record, but it's because I understand how to shepherd an artist through the process, what makes something feel like a finished product, and I know how to use the recording studio as an instrument. But that doesn't mean that I don't have some learning curves about a specific genre of music that I might be working in that maybe not I have as much experience as in others. And so I might move a little bit slower. But for me, pre-production is typically something like all the planning and the songwriting has a lot of that is typically taken place before a record even comes to me, because I'm working on things that are not exclusively or necessarily in the majority financed by outside sources. Some that have backers, either it's a major label or they've been successful as an independent or someone is paying for it. There's like a budget that's created when somebody's willing to spend money on making a record and go to professionals. Hopefully the things about, like, do we have enough songs? Have the songs been selected? Have the songs been approved? Have they been worked taped? Have they been workshopped? Has a storyboard been created? Sometimes, sometimes I get I prefer to just get work tapes, so then I can kind of help the artist create the vision for it as we're making the record. Sometimes I get complete production demos. Those can be a little bit tricky because then somebody's used to something and you got to kind of work through all that stuff. And I'm getting a little distracted by trying to explain too much, but for me, pre-production needs to stay short. I need to have a conversation with the artist about song selection. That's when I need to engage them and give them my opinion about what songs we should be recording. I need to take into account what songs they feel are important to them on the record. Oftentimes they want to hear what my opinion is they'll give me a bunch of songs and ask me to kind of like identify my group that I would put on the record. And oftentimes what I'll find in those situations is that we're in agreement in about half. It's like if we're looking to identify 10 songs out of 20, we might put the same 6 on our list. And then it becomes then it's like, okay, well then that becomes a very interesting conversation of, they're like, well, why did you pick those songs? Or I'm like, why did you pick those songs? Okay, let's talk about it. And we say, okay, well, these songs are this song on your list and this song on my list, they're similar. Maybe they cancel each other out, or one cancels the other out. And that's kind of a conversation you get into. Go into, if it's a band, go into a rehearsal space and sit with them and kind of work with them on the song. almost all songs need work to become records. And sometimes it's very small things. Maybe it's talking to them about the key, or I don't think the structure is finished, or us just defining what we think the elements of the arrangement are going to be. And it's also, for me, it's also an opportunity before we go in and we commit to the idea that we're recording the record, and this is this big commitment, that we're understanding how each other communicates about the song. And this is a great question. I'm gonna spend a little bit more time answering this because it's drawing a lot of things out from me that I definitely know in the back of my mind that I need to convey for you. It's about, like I said early on, it's about communication and relationship. And for me, pre-production, I'm treating this more like you're on your own and you don't really have a lot of resources. So, that's one sort of thing. That's why I've asked you to paint this big picture for yourself to be able to sort of work within this framework. For me, there's a lot of things that are already established. I kind of more immediately know where I want to go with an artist. And it's really about establishing the communication, us understanding with each other what we call the different sections of a song. Not everybody calls what I call the pre-chorus the pre-chorus. The British call it's the what myself as an American would call the bridge. A British person would call the middle eight. And that's fine. I'm totally comfortable. I know what a middle eight is, and I'm totally comfortable calling it that. It's just I want to have that interaction with the artist that sort of establishes what we're talking about. So we're not in the studio recording and I'm saying I'm commenting on the pre-chorus, and they're like, what's the pre-chorus? They might think it's the second part of the verse, or they might think it's what I think is the pre-chorus, they consider the chorus. Just kind of getting through all this language, establishing that stuff. How long does all that take? Well, I mean, honestly, for a whole album's worth of music, I should be able to go into a recording space, a rehearsal space with a band, and we should be able to do that in 3-4 days. Really, I'm not trying to solve not trying to solve everything. I'm just trying to just address some of the bigger picture things, like I think we need a bridge in this song, or the solo's too long, or we need a solo, or this song doesn't have an introduction. I really think it could use an introduction. What if we use the chorus, or what if we use part of this instrumental bit and we also use it at the beginning of the song? Or you've got this cool outro, really cool thing. I mean, that happens a lot with bands. They kind of get a song built up and they get familiar with it, and they practice it, and then that turns into a jam, and then so the jam happens at the end of the song, and they've got this really cool piece of music that they've kind of grown into and developed that happens at the end of the song. It's like, man, can we borrow a part of that and put it and like start the song with that? It's really about doing those types of things. You don't want to overthink pre-production, but for me, I don't want to overthink it. I don't want to take away the possibility of what I know will happen for us in the studio. For you, the answer is a little bit different because you have so much more to learn and manage, and you're on your own. You don't have me there or someone else. I have a team. There's typically 3 of us. When you come and work with me, there's myself, an engineer, and an assistant engineer, and we are as a team. We can manage a lot and we can do a lot. If you're on your own, it's a lot to ask. So your pre-production phase is a lot more about planning and answering questions for yourself and being prepared for those moments when you're going to commit to the recorded version of the song. So I hope that helps.
That was a great answer, because there were actually a few other questions related to literally what your answer was. So questions in one shot. So I think one good question we can go into next is, how do you then deal with creator's block when it comes to finding the concept of a song in the pre-production phase?
Well, how do you deal with the writer's block of it? Well, that's another reason you need to give things time. You need to be able to commit to an idea, establish an idea, and then live with it. Live with it because maybe because you don't know what the next step is, or that you feel maybe you feel like you fully haven't figured it out, but you don't know how to take the next step, or you don't feel inspired to take the next step. You don't have the energy for it. You don't have the clarity for it. Well, doing it in pieces will help that. You will create the opportunity for you to feel re-inspired or reinvigorated, or for that light bulb to go off and you can kind of go back to it. If you feel blocked about something, don't overwork it. Just set it aside. Let's say, I wouldn't, like, if you're working on a 5-song EP, you're working on 5 songs, I would think that you wouldn't get stuck on everything. You might get stuck on something. Don't over focus on it. Move on from it. Maybe the answer won't come until very close to the end, until you have a lot of the other moving parts and colors and dynamics filled in, and there's sometimes no way to answer what the need is for something until you've done some of the other work. You just don't know that the question needs to be answered. The writer's block, it's just a reality. Sometimes it comes. We don't always feel inspired. If you feel stuck on something, it's even as simple as when you're working on a mix, or when I'm working on something. Is if I feel I've gotten to a place and I know that it's not done, but I don't know what the next step is in that moment, or I don't feel the momentum, it's time to step away. Close it, work on the other song. My friend Andrew Sheps, who's a great mixer, Andrew loves the idea of, one of the reasons he loves working in the box and mixing is that it's very easy to just switch over to another song. Work on it, when he's mixing, and I enjoy this kind of process too. Working on it, mixing, just do as much stuff as you feel inspired to in the moment, and then when you sort of feel like you've run out of ideas, you're not done, but you don't just kind of keep hammering at it and try to figure out how to finish it in that moment. If you don't feel inspired, put it away. Sometimes it only takes a 10-minute break. Sometimes you only need to take a walk around the block, go get a coffee, call a friend, go outside, watch a movie. Listen to some other music. Just get away from it. Open up your mind. Open up the opportunity for it to come to you. I've read where Paul Simon felt like he had writer's block, and I consider Paul Simon, and many other people do, to be one of the greatest writers in music history. He said that he's had writer's block for a year or two. And while that's a really devastating thing, I'm sure, to have to go through. It's just the reality of things. You just have to be patient with it, and you have to it's just like, you can't place your expectations too high. You have to be patient with yourself. You have to, if you haven't, maybe that's the time to do a second cover song, or to start that cover song. Once, to kind of find some inspiration, stretch your perspective, and kind of carry on. Ask somebody else to consider asking someone else to contribute to it. Maybe someone else's opinion and contribution can kind of open up your own opinions and feelings. It's something you just have to be patient for.
We'll just do a couple more questions.
But Chris, let's do everything that you think is important. I want this to answer everything.
All right. Well, because this then leads on from the question you've just answered. So in the case of writer's block, then Banash is asking, is it worth them preparing an extra song or two in case a song selected for the EP doesn't work out? Or do you think maybe that's overthinking a little bit too much? And he also says thanks for all the wisdom, and he's loving it.
Oh, you're very welcome. That's absolutely my pleasure. I'm so honored to have you guys all here, and I really sincerely hope that you get so much out of this. And I'm going to endeavor for the rest, I'm endeavoring and will for the rest of this time that we're together to make it absolutely the most valuable thing it can be for you. Do I think it's worth doing more music? Not really. Only if you get really, truly stuck. The reality, in my opinion, is the reality is that if you're creating more work for yourself to do in the midst of what is a 5-song EP, I'm just going to keep calling it a 5-song EP. It's like we might be working on one song. You might be working on 10. I'm not saying that because you've taken this information in that you have to sort of stick with that. We're trying to find the middle ground and cover as much information as possible that that you can sort of branch off and take on yourself and develop through and become powerful, become an artist, become a creator that is, uniquely powerful. Doing a couple extra songs, if you're already doing 5, I mean, that's you're adding a lot to the plate. You're diffusing your energy. I would rather you focus on your 1 song, 2 songs, your 5 songs. Focus on those 5 songs and take them to the finish line. Don't set unrealistic expectations that, I mean, you need to set goals and create standards and timelines and deadlines, because I mean, most people work better under pressure with a deadline. It's just like you get motivated to do it. It's just like, this has got to happen, But don't create the expectation that when January 1st comes, like let's say you've been working on an EP already and you've set the target as January 1st. It's like, I'm going to finish and I'm going to be able to put this out in early February. Then I can turn my attention to promoting myself and letting people know that I've got this work completed and, tidy everything up, focus on the artwork, and then put it out beginning of February. Thing is like, I'd much rather you work towards your January 1st goal with your 5 songs and get them finished before January 1st, hopefully, right? And sit back on January 1st and say, okay, does it feel like I accomplished my goal? And, if your realistic assessment or some opinions that you have sort of indicate that maybe 1 or 2 songs didn't live up to what you think the expectation, or not, don't have too much expectation. Doesn't really meet what you hoped it was. Of course it's an expectation, but don't place your expectations too high. Don't put too much pressure on yourself. Allow yourself at that point, January 1st, to say, you know what? Song number 3, song called All About Me, didn't work out as good as I thought it could. So I need a replacement song for that one. In a way, that opening up of a spot or 2, you will be so much more informed at that stage of the game to make that to sort of just say, okay, well, I met my goal. I got the 5 songs done. I need to. One of them I don't feel good enough about it. So I'm going to take that off. So January 2nd, I'm going to start the process all over for 1 song. You can get to, I bet you, from all the experience that you leading up to that January 2nd date, you can make that song happen much faster. You might have already sort of written the song and you didn't identify it as one of the ones that you wanted to include, and you can kind of take it through the process. Chances are it will go faster and turn out equal or better than the work that you already did. Now, I'm not saying just because you on January 2nd bettered the work that you'd done leading up to January 1st doesn't mean you should throw all that work away. That's a really poor way to go about things. Nothing is going to be perfect. No record is perfect. No recording experience or outcome is going to be as you hoped it would be in every aspect of it. There will be some things that are disappointments. There will be some things that are huge surprises. And there will be the songs and the things that happen that you could have never hoped for or predicted. And you have to accept it as an experience and a statement and a document of your creative and artistic time up until that point. And then you need to put it out in the world and you need to let it have the life it's going to have. And then you need to prepare for what's next. If you don't ever put out work, if you don't ever release something and grow, and then you have to have a completion stage. You have to have something to look back on. You have to get it out and make it final. to be able to move on. If you never do that, you'll never move on. You can progress, but you'll never get to a place where you can make significant change and have, you know, meaningful experiences. You need to get stuff out so that you can share it with people, so that they can respond, so you can have fans, so you can go play, so you can get that sync in that movie, perhaps, or you know, all these different things. You just need to do that. So a lot of information for answering a question, you know, about like, should you do extra music? I don't really think so. Honestly, when somebody comes to me and they want to make a record, it's like I'm always really hopeful that it's going to be 8 to 12 songs. 12 is kind of pushing it. I always sort of, I'm not unwilling to do it, but I know in my experience and in my heart that it's like when the manager or the label is pushing for that 13th and 14th song because we need it for the Target release, or we want to have a special release for this territory, or we need to do this Walmart exclusive, or you know, we need to cater to all these different things. It's like, well, is that the most important thing you want us to focus our energy on, that extra song? This takes a huge amount of effort and energy to make a record, an album, a body of work. And so just the more you have to carry along and the more you have to do, it's better to focus your energy on fewer jobs. That's also the reason why I sort of driving home this preparation and doing things in segments where you can reflect on it and learn on it and create context for yourself so that you can take yourself through the journey. Because if you just run into the room and just try to do it all at once, chances are you're not going to be very successful. So long answer for that, but I hope that helps, and I hope it helps on other points as well.
We'll wrap up the Q&A with just a couple more questions.
Yeah, happy.
This one's by Sunny, and it's more of a technical one as opposed to the broad strokes one that you just answered, which is more of, do you do mic shootouts during pre-production for vocals and various instruments?
Absolutely. Great question. And yes, great question. Absolutely. That pre-production is also the time to get to know your equipment. And just the way Sunny's asking it is like, yeah, find out, you know, this kick drum microphone, it's a kick drum microphone. Should you sing on it? I don't know. But, you know, for your voice, this might be the best sounding mic you have. And you don't know unless you try it. And it may not be, you know, it's just like, you might have a really intense, hard hitting song, and this might really be good for that vocal. But then, you know, if you're going to sing something really delicate, or just sort of your overall voice sounds better on this, yeah, definitely need to do the homework. When I'm working on a record and I work with a new vocalist to me, I've never recorded them sing. Vocal is one of the hardest things to capture, honestly. And we will talk about some of the techniques of how you should go about recording your vocal in the next section. But absolutely, that's a great question. You need to get to know your equipment. You have to get to know your voice. Finding your sound is very important, and it's a process of discovery. It's a process of elimination. It's like, you need to do the work to know that you never want to record your voice on this mic, right? You don't want to be you don't want to have your little recording session set up at your home studio, and this is the only mic you've left yourself to sing on. If getting the vocal in that particular moment is important, well, you don't want to have left yourself with that, right? The process for me when I'm with a new vocalist is I put up maybe half a dozen mics, and I have them sing part of the verse and part of the chorus, maybe the whole verse and a whole chorus on each microphone. And there you get some clear winners and clear losers. What makes a microphone a winner? Well, like for the voice, do I hear the full tonal range of the voice? Does the articulation of all the notes which microphone does it sound the most even on? The articulation of the pronunciation and diction and clarity of the voice. Every voice is very unique. Every microphone is unique. and you need to find the things that complement. And then once we kind of identify from a selection of microphones which the best choice is, then what I do is I have a bunch of different mic pre choices. So then I take that microphone and I shoot out all the mic pre's that I have at my disposal. And then once we do that, then I figure out which compressor to use. I find the golden chain for the vocal every time. Along the way, I might discover that I may not want them to sing every song on the same mic. It's about learning your equipment. Now, that's me. I have the luxury of having all this equipment. If you have just a few pieces of gear, well, just do your best to find out what your best opportunity is to capture the voice. If you don't have a bunch of mic pre's to record the vocal with, that's okay. Choose the best microphone. Just be as informed as you can. It's just like if you have an Apollo, if you have a Universal Audio Apollo, and you have the Unison pre technology, well, that's demo the different mic pre's, and then maybe only decide. Don't necessarily own them all. Maybe you demo them and you discover the one that works the best for your voice, and then that gives you the decision to buy that thing, or you learn how your one particular microphone that sounds great on your voice sounds on different pre's, and maybe one microphone preamp is good on this microphone for a certain type of song or a certain section of a song, and then another one is good for the background vocals. Those are techniques that we'll talk about. You don't want to use the same record path for all your vocals. When you layer things up, you want to change it up so that you have different sonic imprints. But I hope that answered the question in a way that makes sense and kind of reveals a little bit of the process that you need to be going through, not just for the voice, but for everything. You need to know your gear, and you need to know how much you can get out of it and what it sounds like. The thing that I can rely on now, because I have listened to so many pieces of gear, I know in my mind and in my imagination when I conceive of a sound or I hear a sound or I know where it is I want to go, I have a pretty good idea of what pieces of gear to pull together to the way that they color and manipulate and change the sound and the combinations they make, because I know that already. It takes a long time to learn those things, and that's also part of what I'm suggesting in your planning and pre-production phase is you familiarize yourself and you prepare. You're knowledgeable. So let's thank you, Chris. Let's have another question.
Great. All right, then this will be the last question for this section.
Cool.
So this one's a little bit more on the simpler side again, but to then produce a 5-track EP, considering what you've said about not working more than you have to and focusing on the music you have on hand, how many songs should a person aim to write or demo for the EP? This is asked by Joey.
Honestly, as many as you can. I mean, it's some people, honestly, they write 90 songs for an album. Some people write 10. Some people for an EP would write 5 songs and then they have their 5 songs. It depends, but you should write as many as you feel inspired to write, but do not, once you feel like you have enough songs, or if you're satisfied with the 5 songs you've got, I'm not saying don't do it. Go for it. I would say that you should have at least twice as many songs as you're going to identify for your project. If you've only got 5 songs, I would recommend that you just start with 2. Pick the strongest 2, start with those. Working on those 2 will inform you about, they'll inspire you. You might write a couple more. You might have a couple more ideas that you set aside, like I talked about earlier. I mean, the sky's the limit in terms of, like, if you feel prolific and creative, go for it. But do not trap yourself. At a certain point, you got to say, okay, I've written enough songs. Now I need to get to the point. I need to get to the part of committing to the idea that I'm selecting a number of them, committing to making records of those, and going through the process. I think it's really important. At every stage of this is ultra important that you make decisions and you move forward, you set goals, and you work towards those goals. You can always go back and revise something. You can always take that song out, off the record and either decide, well, my intention was to make a 5-song EP. I don't think this song works. I'm going to take it off. Okay, so it's a 4-song EP. Or on January 2nd, you start recording that 5th song to replace it. Write as many songs as you can in a reasonable amount of time. That gives you the best opportunity to choose your strongest material. But do not procrastinate. If you write 8 songs and your goal was to write 10, but you hit that writer's block, well, you know what? 8 songs might be enough to pull your 5 out of. You might need the inspiration of picking from your 8 songs and identifying your 5 to kind of get the juices flowing, to break through that writer's block, or just have progression, a positive motion. I encourage you to write as many songs as possible, but do not let it hold you back from what your ultimate goal is creating your vision and working towards that through the recording process.
Cool. That's a great answer. I believe now would actually be a good time to break the workshop for a short little bit so people can use the bathroom or
Me too.
messages, etc. So,
well, can I just say, just great. I think we've been at this. Is that right? 2 hours and 45 minutes. So, we're going to get into recording and mixing. So, I imagine that. I imagine that we're going to spend almost an equal amount of time, if not more, on the back half. I'm here for the duration. I know some of you we're all over the world. Some of you are in some pretty, middle of the night time zones, early in the morning time zones. I really hope you can stick around. If not, it's totally cool. This is going to be made available later. Chris, do you think we could take a 20-minute break, and then? And then I'll be able to eat a little bit of food and use the bathroom, and I'll be powered back up to see this through with you guys.
All right. So we're going to take a 20-minute break. So feel free to use the bathroom, get a little snack, maybe check your notes, and then Jacquire will be back and we'll be ready to go after the break's over.
Cool. Thanks, guys.